We had been married for 20 years. 20 years! You'd think by now I'd know everything about her, her quirks, her secrets. But lately, something felt off. Not major, but enough to make me wonder if I was just being paranoid. You see, every night, like clockwork, our neighbors would go at it. They weren't exactly subtle. It became almost a joke between us, how loud they were, how predictable it all was. But then, something strange started happening. My wife, Linda, would stand by the window during those nights. She'd stare, pretending to be busy with something else, but I knew better. One evening, I caught her in the act. She was watching them. Not just watching, but transfixed. I didn't say anything at first. I told myself it was harmless. Just a curious glance, right? We all get nosy sometimes. But night after night, there she was, silent, eyes glued to the window as the neighbors made love. It didn't sit right with me. I even laughed it off once or twice, making jokes about how we should close our blinds. But she never laughed. That's when the pit in my stomach started growing. Then came the night. The night that changed everything. Linda had gone out earlier that evening, said she was just running errands. I didn't think much of it at the time. Around midnight I noticed something odd. The neighbor's window, where they usually left the curtains open, was closed, from the inside. At first, I thought nothing of it until I saw her. My wife, was there, standing at the neighbor's window. She reached up and pulled the curtain shut. That was all it took. In that brief moment, a shadow appeared behind the curtain. A silhouette of two bodies coming together. One of them was Linda. I stood there, frozen. My brain tried to make sense of what I just saw. No way. That couldn't be her. I rubbed my eyes like I was in some bad dream, but the curtain stayed closed. The silhouettes moved, and it hit me like a punch to the gut. One of those figures was my wife, my Linda. I felt my legs give out a little, and I leaned against the windowsill. The house was too quiet, except for the faint sounds from next door. Sounds I was all too familiar with by now, but this time, they felt like they were mocking me. I paced around the living room, my heart racing, trying to figure out what to do. Should I storm over there? Confront them? But the thought of actually seeing her, seeing them, made me feel sick. For the first time in 20 years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I grabbed my phone and stared at it, my thumb hovering over her name in my contacts. I almost called her. But what was I going to say? Hey, honey, just noticed you're at the neighbor's house having sex. Care to explain? Instead, I just sat. I waited. Maybe an hour passed, maybe more. I don't even know. Time felt like it was standing still. All I could think about was what had been happening right under my nose. I replayed every evening she stood at that window, every excuse she made to go out. It all lined up now in a way that made me feel like a fool. Then I heard the front door. It creaked open softly, as if she was trying not to make a sound. I didn't move. I just sat there, staring straight ahead, my mind racing. The front door clicked shut, and I heard her footsteps moving cautiously through the house. She wasn't expecting me to be awake. She thought she could sneak back in, like nothing happened. I should have gotten up, confronted her right then and there, but I didn't. I just froze. Hey, you still up? Her voice came from behind me, too casual, too calm. I didn't answer right away. When I finally turned to look at her, there she was, standing in the doorway, her hair slightly messy, a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. She had changed out of whatever she'd been wearing earlier. Now she was in sweatpants, like she'd just been out for a casual walk. But her face told a different story. Yeah, couldn't sleep, I muttered, barely able to look her in the eye. She walked past me into the kitchen, her back turned to me as she busied herself with the fridge, like everything was perfectly normal. Like she hadn't just been next door, closing the curtain and doing God knows what with him. How was your night? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, trying to act like I hadn't seen everything. My hands clenched into fists under the table. She hesitated for a split second, her hand pausing on the fridge door. It was fine. Just ran a few errands. Why? I could hear the lie in her voice, and it made my stomach churn. My mind flashed back to the shadowy figures, the sounds, and I almost couldn't keep it together. Nothing, I said, forcing a smile that felt more like a grimace. Just wondered where you were. She turned around and smiled, that smile. The one I'd seen 1,000 times before. But now, it felt fake, like everything else in this moment. I stared at her, trying to see the woman I thought I knew. But all I could see was betrayal. I'm gonna head to bed, she said, walking towards me. She leaned down and kissed me on the cheek. You coming? I just nodded, but I didn't follow her right away. I sat there, feeling numb, watching her walk upstairs like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just seen her with him. For the first time in 20 years, I had no idea who my wife really was. I stayed downstairs for what felt like hours, staring blankly at the walls. My mind kept replaying the image of her closing that curtain. Every time I blinked, I saw it again. The shape of her body pressed against his, the soft glow of the neighbor's light casting shadows that I couldn't erase. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I made my way upstairs, step by step, feeling heavier with each one. The house was dead quiet, except for the soft creak of the floor beneath my feet. When I got to our bedroom door, it was slightly ajar. She was already in bed, her back to me, the soft rhythm of her breathing making it seem like she was asleep. I stood there, watching her. The woman I'd spent 2 decades of my life with. The mother of my children. The person who had promised me forever. How many times had we shared that bed, laughed, argued, made up, and now it felt like there was a chasm between us, and I was standing on the edge of it, ready to fall. I climbed into bed, trying to be as quiet as possible, but the mattress dipped, and she shifted slightly. You okay? She mumbled, her voice thick with sleep, or maybe guilt. I couldn't tell. Yeah, I lied. Just tired. She didn't respond, and I didn't expect her to. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my chest. I could feel her warmth beside me, but it felt wrong now. Everything felt wrong. I wanted to reach out, to grab her and shake her, to demand the truth, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. Instead, I lay there, wide awake, with my mind racing and my heart breaking, as the woman I loved slept peacefully next to me. I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. Her standing at the window, watching them every night. Was it just curiosity at first? Or had this been building for months? Maybe even years? And what now? Was this just a one-time thing, or was there more to it? These questions gnawed at me, keeping me awake long after her breathing had slowed into the rhythm of deep sleep. I felt trapped. Trapped in this room, this house, this marriage that now felt like a lie. I stared at the ceiling until the first light of dawn crept through the blinds, and even then, sleep wouldn't come. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed before Linda woke up. I couldn't bear the thought of looking at her, not after everything. I felt like a stranger in my own skin, walking around in a fog. In the kitchen, I made coffee, the sound of the percolating brew the only thing breaking the silence. As I stared out the window, my eyes wandered over to the neighbor's house. Their curtains were still drawn, just like the night before. I hated that house now. Hated the way it stood there, so close to mine, holding secrets I wasn't ready to confront. As I sipped my coffee, I heard footsteps behind me. She was up. Morning, she said, her voice soft, almost cheerful. You didn't wake me. I didn't turn around. Didn't want to disturb you. She moved closer, leaning against the counter beside me. I could feel her eyes on me, but I kept mine locked on the view outside. I couldn't stand the thought of her pretending everything was normal. You okay? She asked, a hint of concern creeping into her voice. Yeah, I muttered, not trusting myself to say more. She paused, then placed a hand on my arm. It was a gesture I would have welcomed any other day, but today it felt wrong, like her touch burned. I pulled away, and I saw her flinch out of the corner of my eye. Are you sure? You've been acting distant lately. Her words sent a wave of anger through me. Distant? She had no idea. I'm fine, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. She sighed and turned away, busying herself with the dishes in the sink. If you say so. We spent the rest of the morning in uncomfortable silence. Every word felt like it had a hidden meaning, every glance loaded with suspicion. I could barely stand to be in the same room as her, yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. I needed answers. I needed to know if what I saw last night was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. But how do you bring something like that up? Hey, honey, I saw you having sex with the neighbor through their window. Care to explain? I couldn't. Not yet. As I stood there, drowning in my own thoughts, I heard a knock at the door. I froze. My stomach turned. Who could that be? Linda looked at me. Are you expecting someone? No, I said, my heart pounding. She walked over to the door and opened it. My breath caught in my throat when I saw who was standing there. It was him. The neighbor. The man I saw her with. There he was. The neighbor. Standing on my doorstep like he had no idea what had happened the night before. My heart started racing, my mind flashing back to the silhouettes, the sounds, him with my wife. He gave a casual smile. Morning, Linda. Morning, Jeff, he said, nodding toward me. His voice was smooth, too calm for my liking. I stayed rooted to the spot, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. I wanted to punch him, just swing and wipe that smug look off his face. But instead I stood there, silent. What's up? Linda asked, her tone far too light, like she wasn't hiding the fact that she'd just been with this man. Just came by to return this, he said, holding up a toolbox. Thanks for lending it to me. I was meaning to bring it back yesterday. Yesterday. The word hung in the air like a slap to the face. Was that the excuse? A toolbox? Was that the cover for what they did? No problem, Linda replied, taking the toolbox from his hands. Her fingers brushed his for a second, and it made my blood boil. I clenched my jaw so tight I thought my teeth might crack. You guys busy later? He asked, glancing between us. I was thinking about throwing something on the grill. Maybe a few beers? I couldn't believe it. He was standing in front of me, talking like everything was normal, like he wasn't sleeping with my wife. I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. We've got plans. Linda looked at me, surprised. We do? Yeah, I snapped. We do. The neighbor raised an eyebrow, clearly picking up on the tension. All right, maybe another time then. Take care. He turned and walked away, whistling softly as he went. Linda closed the door behind him, and the house felt too quiet, too heavy with everything unsaid. What was that about? She asked, turning to me, her eyes wide with confusion, or maybe guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. I didn't know if I could trust anything she did or said. I stared at her, my pulse still racing. You tell me, I muttered under my breath. What? She asked, frowning. I shook my head, too furious to even begin explaining. Nothing. Forget it. She stood there for a moment, studying me, but I couldn't meet her gaze. If I looked at her too long, I might explode. I might let slip what I knew, what I saw. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Okay, she finally said, her voice uncertain. She turned and headed upstairs, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sank into a chair at the table, my hands shaking. I could feel my heart thudding in my chest, loud and insistent. I couldn't keep doing this, pretending everything was fine, pretending I didn't know. But what was the alternative? Blow up my marriage? Rip apart everything we had built over 20 years? I didn't know what to do. All I knew was that nothing felt the same anymore. I didn't feel the same anymore. And I wasn't sure I ever would. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the spot where he'd stood. It was like the air still smelled of his cologne, and I wanted to tear the place apart. I gripped my coffee mug, feeling the warmth in my hands, but inside I was cold. Linda's footsteps upstairs were faint, and I listened, hoping for some clue, anything that would make this easier, something to tell me what to do. But it was just the usual noise. She wasn't up there, having some secret conversation. She was probably folding laundry or whatever routine stuff filled her day now. It all felt so mundane, so disgustingly normal after what I'd seen. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my phone and went outside, standing on the porch, hoping the fresh air would clear my head. But all I could see was the neighbor's house. That damn house. I thought about the nights Linda stood there, watching. What was she thinking? How long had this been going on? And what about last night? How many times had she snuck over there, leaving me in the dark? The questions swirled around in my head until I thought I might go insane. I needed to know. I needed to see for myself what she was hiding. Without thinking, I walked down the steps and headed toward the neighbor's house. My heart pounded in my chest with each step. The closer I got, the more my hands shook. I didn't even know what I was looking for, evidence, a sign, something to confirm what I already knew deep down. When I reached the side of the house, I glanced around, making sure no one was watching. Then I walked up to the window, the same one where I'd seen her last night. The curtains were drawn, just like before. I hesitated, then reached out and nudged the fabric aside, just enough to peek inside. My breath caught in my throat. The living room looked exactly as I had imagined it. There was nothing particularly special about the room itself, just a couch, a coffee table, a few chairs. But I wasn't looking at the furniture. I was looking for ghosts. I could almost picture her there, tangled up with him, their bodies moving in ways I couldn't stand to think about. A flood of rage hit me, and I almost knocked on the door right then. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, watching, as if hoping some hidden truth would jump out at me from behind those curtains. And then it hit me, this wasn't just about what I had seen. It was about everything I hadn't seen. The nights she came home late, the way she stood at the window like she couldn't look away, the quiet conversations I didn't hear but felt in the way she'd grown distant from me. I turned and walked back home, my head spinning, my stomach in knots. I needed a plan. I couldn't confront her yet. Not without more proof, not without understanding the full extent of what had happened. And most of all, I couldn't let her know I was onto her. Not yet. When I got inside, Linda was sitting at the dining table, scrolling through her phone like it was any other Saturday. She looked up and smiled. "Where'd you go?" "Just needed some air," I said, forcing a smile. It felt hollow. "Oh," she replied, barely looking up. "Well, I'm thinking of heading to the store later." "Need anything?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. The woman I'd spent 2 decades with was talking about errands while I was sitting here, knowing she had been in our neighbor's bed the night before. "No," I muttered. "I'm good." I went upstairs, shutting the bedroom door behind me. I needed space. I needed to think. Most of all, I needed to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. Upstairs, I shut the door behind me, leaning against it as if that flimsy piece of wood could keep everything from crashing down. My mind was racing, my pulse pounding in my ears. I needed to gather my thoughts, to figure out how to deal with this without blowing up. But the truth was, I didn't have a clue. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, wondering if I should call someone, anyone, to talk about this. But who would I even tell? The guys at work? My brother? How do you even start that conversation? "Hey man, so I think my wife's screwing the neighbor." Yeah, that'd go over well. I couldn't handle their pity. Or worse, their advice. No, this was something I had to figure out on my own. Then, out of nowhere, I remembered something. Linda's phone. She was always glued to it, but lately, she'd been more secretive than usual. And I had a feeling it wasn't just Candy Crush she was playing. I knew I had to look. I had to check if she was hiding something. With her still downstairs, I figured I had a small window of time. I left the bedroom quietly and crept down the hall. Her phone was usually in the kitchen, charging. Sure enough, when I peeked around the corner, it was right there on the counter, plugged in like it was innocent. But I knew better. I glanced around, making sure she was still occupied, then slid her phone into my hand. My heart pounded as I quickly swiped to unlock it. I knew her password, of course I did. After 20 years, you learn those things. Once inside, I opened her messages, scanning through them for anything suspicious. But there wasn't much. Most of it was just conversations with friends, family, nothing out of the ordinary. I scrolled faster, digging deeper. Still nothing. But then I saw it, a chat with an unknown number. There were no names, no emojis, just plain text. My stomach twisted. I clicked on the thread, and my heart sank. The messages were short, vague. But they said enough. Him. Last night was amazing. Her. Can't stop thinking about it. Him. When can we do it again? I couldn't breathe. There it was. Proof. She had been with him, and not just once. I scrolled back further, but the messages only went back a week. Everything else must have been deleted. My hands shook as I read through the rest, every word like a knife twisting deeper. Her. Same time next week? Him. Definitely. I stood there, gripping the phone so hard I thought it might crack. My eyes burned with anger and humiliation. How long had this been going on? How many times had she gone over there while I was sitting in this house, clueless? I needed to confront her. Now. But I couldn't do it like this, not in the heat of the moment. I needed to think, to plan, to make sure I didn't lose it when I finally faced her. I heard footsteps coming down the hallway, and I quickly locked the phone and set it back on the counter, acting like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen, smiling, as if everything was fine. Hey, I'm heading to the store in a bit. You sure you don't need anything? I shook my head, barely able to look at her. No. I'm good. All right, she said cheerfully, grabbing her keys. Be back soon. I watched her walk out the door, my blood boiling under the surface. She had no idea I knew. No idea her entire world was about to come crashing down. The moment she left, I grabbed my phone and dialed the one person I never thought I'd have to call, my lawyer. As soon as Linda drove off, I sat there, staring at my phone, my thumb hovering over the contact. I had never imagined in all these years that I'd need a divorce lawyer. Not in a million years. But here I was, my life unraveling faster than I could think straight. I took a deep breath and tapped the number. It rang twice before I heard his familiar voice. Hey, Jeff! How's it going? He said, all casual, like this was any other day. My throat felt tight. Mark, I need to talk to you about something. It's important. There was a pause, and I could hear the shift in his tone immediately. What's going on? I swallowed hard, gripping the phone. It's Linda. I think she's been cheating on me. Actually, I know she has. Silence. Then, shit, man. Are you sure? I caught her, I said, my voice trembling slightly. Last night, I saw her at the neighbor's house. And this morning I found texts, there's no doubt. Mark sighed on the other end. Damn, Jeff. I'm so sorry. You want to come by the office, or should we meet somewhere private? I don't know yet, I muttered, running a hand through my hair. I'm still trying to figure it all out. But I needed to. I don't know, just get some advice. I don't even know where to start. He didn't rush me. Mark was good like that. Look, take a deep breath. You're in shock right now, and that's understandable. But you need to be smart about this. Don't confront her without a plan, and don't let her know you've figured it out until you've got everything in order. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Yeah. I guess. It's just hard, man. We've been together for 20 years. I never thought. I know, he said, his voice softer now. But you've got to think ahead. Protect yourself? Do you have any other evidence besides what you saw last night and the texts? No, not yet, I admitted. But I'm sure there's more. I just don't know how to get it. Well, start documenting everything. If you can get proof of more than one instance, it'll help if things get ugly in court. Financial records, phone records, anything. I rubbed my eyes, feeling the weight of it all crashing down. All right. I'll do that. And Jeff, he added, his tone more serious, don't do anything rash. I've seen too many guys lose everything because they acted out of anger. Stay calm. Stay focused. We'll take care of this the right way. I thanked him and hung up, sitting there for a moment, trying to process everything. My head was spinning. This wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about everything. Our marriage, our home, our kids, it was all tied up in this mess. I walked over to the kitchen window and stared at the neighbor's house again. I felt like I was seeing everything through new eyes now. That house, that man, had become the epicenter of my world falling apart. But Mark was right. I had to be smart. I had to get my ducks in a row before I could confront Linda. I couldn't just explode on her without a plan, without proof. My mind was buzzing with next steps. I needed to dig deeper. I needed to find more evidence. But how? I didn't want to be sneaky, but what other choice did I have? And then, an idea hit me. The doorbell camera. I had installed one a few months ago for security. Maybe it had caught something that could prove what I already knew. If I could access the footage, I might find the moment she snuck out last night, or even other times I hadn't noticed. I grabbed my phone and opened the app for the doorbell camera, my heart pounding in my chest as I scrolled through the recordings. I found the clip. There she was, last night. Slipping out of the house around 11:30 p.m., looking around like she was making sure no one saw her. I watched as she walked over to the neighbors, disappearing into the darkness. That was all the proof I needed. Watching the doorbell footage made my blood run cold. There she was, sneaking out in the dead of night, moving with the kind of caution you'd expect from someone who knew they were doing something wrong. I couldn't believe it, couldn't believe I had missed all of this. I played the clip over and over, my anger rising with each replay. But mixed with that rage was a deep, gnawing sadness. How could she do this? After everything we built together, the years, the memories, she just threw it away like it meant nothing. But now I had the proof. The doorbell footage, the texts, it was all there. Mark had been right. I needed to document everything. If this was going to court, I needed to be prepared. I couldn't confront her yet, not until I had a full picture of just how deep this betrayal went. I scrolled further back through the camera footage, searching for other nights she might have snuck out. Sure enough, there were more. 3 nights in the past month, all around the same time. Each clip showed her slipping out the door, heading over to his place. No doubt in my mind now, this wasn't a one-time mistake. This was an affair. I felt sick. I sat down at the table, my head in my hands. What was I supposed to do now? I couldn't keep living like this, pretending everything was normal. But I couldn't just blow up without a plan either. I needed to be methodical. For my own sanity. The door creaked open, and I snapped out of my thoughts. Linda was back from the store. She walked in with a couple of grocery bags, humming to herself like it was just another day. Like she hadn't been slipping out of our bed to sleep with another man. Hey, she said, setting the bags down on the counter. I picked up a few things for dinner tonight. Thought we could have a nice meal together. A nice meal. My stomach churned at the thought. I could barely look at her, but I forced myself to respond. Yeah, sounds good. She didn't seem to notice how flat my voice was. She was too busy unpacking groceries, humming that same cheerful tune, oblivious to the storm building inside me. I needed to play along, just for a little longer. So, she said casually, glancing over at me, I was thinking we could invite the neighbors over for a barbecue soon. It's been a while since we all got together, right? I nearly choked on my own breath. Invite the neighbors? The audacity of her suggestion was almost laughable. But I kept my face neutral, hiding the anger bubbling beneath the surface. Yeah, maybe, I muttered, standing up and heading toward the stairs. I need to check on something real quick. As I walked away, I could feel her eyes on me. I didn't care. I needed to get out of that room before I said something I couldn't take back. I needed to breathe. Upstairs, I paced back and forth in the bedroom, my mind racing. How long was I supposed to keep this up? How long could I pretend that everything was fine while my marriage crumbled beneath me? Every time I looked at her now, all I could see was the lies, the betrayal. I glanced at the closet, and an idea crossed my mind. I needed more proof, more than just texts and doorbell footage. There had to be something in her stuff, something she hadn't deleted. A receipt, a note, anything. I opened her closet, rifling through her clothes, her shoes. Nothing. Then I saw her purse. I hesitated for a moment before pulling it down from the shelf, feeling a pang of guilt as I unzipped it. But that guilt was quickly drowned out by the need for answers. At the bottom of her bag, I found it. A small slip of paper, crumpled up like she tried to hide it. I unfolded it slowly, my hands shaking. It was a receipt, from a hotel just outside of town. The date matched one of the nights she'd sneaked out. I stared at it, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The final piece of the puzzle. I stared at the hotel receipt, my mind racing. This wasn't just about sneaking over to the neighbor's house. It was bigger than that. She had gone out of her way, booked a room, spent time with him outside of our neighborhood. She wasn't just slipping into his house late at night. She was making arrangements, meeting him at a place where no one would recognize them. This wasn't an impulse, it was planned. I stuffed the receipt back into my pocket and leaned against the car seat, feeling the weight of the situation press down harder than ever. Everything I had been avoiding, every suspicion, was now confirmed in black and white. Linda had gone too far, and there was no pretending anymore. But the question that haunted me was, why? What was she getting from him that she couldn't get from me? I could feel my stomach twisting, the mixture of betrayal and humiliation gnawing at me. The thought of her, with him, in some hotel bed, it made me feel physically ill. I gripped the steering wheel, forcing myself to breathe. After sitting in the car for what felt like an eternity, I knew I couldn't avoid the confrontation any longer. I had the texts, the footage, and now this. The puzzle was complete. The only thing left was to face her and demand the truth. I drove back home, the weight of the conversation looming ahead of me like a dark cloud. Every turn of the wheel felt heavier than the last, my mind playing out 100 different scenarios of how this confrontation would go. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I sat there for a minute, trying to steel myself. This wasn't going to be easy, but it had to be done. I couldn't live with this lie any longer. The front door clicked softly behind me as I walked into the house. The living room was bathed in the warm glow of the evening light, and there she was, Linda, sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone like it was just another ordinary day. Like everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. It would never be fine again. When I stepped inside, Linda looked up from the couch, a casual smile on her face as if nothing had changed. She glanced at me, then back to her phone. "You're back. Did you get what you needed?" I stared at her for a moment, feeling the weight of the hotel receipt still in my pocket. How could she sit there, acting like everything was fine? Like she hadn't been sneaking out to meet him in some seedy hotel? I didn't answer. I just walked into the living room, stood in front of her, and pulled the receipt from my pocket. I tossed it onto the coffee table between us. Her eyes flicked to it, confusion flashing across her face. "What's this?" "You tell me," I said, my voice calm but cold. She frowned, leaning forward to pick up the slip of paper. As she unfolded it, I watched her expression change, first to confusion, then to recognition, and finally to panic. Her hand froze, and the color drained from her face. "Jeff, I can explain," she stammered, her voice trembling as she set the receipt down. Her eyes met mine, but I didn't see the woman I had known for 20 years. All I saw was a stranger who had lied to me, betrayed me. "Explain?" I said, my voice rising. "Explain how you've been sneaking off to meet him? How long, Linda? How long have you been doing this behind my back?" She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. It's not what you think. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Not what I think? Really? So, what was it then? A casual dinner with a friend? A little catch-up in a hotel room? Do you think I'm stupid? Tears welled up in her eyes as she buried her face in her hands. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I felt my pulse quicken, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. You didn't mean for it to happen? You booked a hotel room, Linda. That wasn't an accident. That was planned. She sobbed harder, her whole body trembling as she tried to speak through the tears. I was lonely. I don't know why I did it. You've been so distant, always busy. I felt invisible. My jaw tightened. And that's your excuse? Because I was busy? You had a choice, Linda. You could have talked to me. You could have said something. Instead, you went behind my back and slept with a neighbor. It wasn't like that, she cried, wiping her eyes. It wasn't just about the sex. I felt seen. I don't know how it got this far. I didn't mean to hurt you. Her words rang hollow, bouncing around the room like an echo that had lost its meaning. You didn't mean to hurt me? I spat. You've been lying to my face, sneaking out of our bed, going to some hotel. What did you think would happen? She tried to reach for me, but I stepped back, avoiding her touch. Jeff, please. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her, the tears streaking her face, the desperation in her voice, but all I could feel was anger. Anger and betrayal. The life we'd built, the years we'd spent together, it all felt shattered, lying in pieces at our feet. How long? I asked, my voice breaking. How long has this been going on? She looked down, biting her lip. A few months, maybe longer. Months? I nearly shouted. And you never thought to stop? To think about what this would do to us? I did, but by then I didn't know how to stop. I'm so sorry, Jeff. Please, we can get through this. We can go to counseling, we can. I don't know if I want to, I said, cutting her off. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. She sobbed harder, but her tears didn't move me. Not anymore. I felt numb, hollow, like the man she'd been sneaking around with had stolen not just my wife, but a piece of me I couldn't get back. I need space, I muttered, turning toward the door. Jeff, please, she begged, her voice raw. Don't leave. We can fix this, I swear. I'll do anything. But I couldn't face her, not right now. Without another word, I walked out the door, the cool evening air hitting me like a slap. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing for sure, I couldn't stay in that house. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. I walked aimlessly down the street, the cool night air doing little to calm the storm inside me. My mind raced, replaying every moment, every lie, every night Linda had left our bed and walked into his. I didn't even know where I was headed. I just knew I needed to get away. Away from the house, away from her. My thoughts kept drifting back to her pleading face, her sobs, her apologies. But they felt empty now. She had shattered something between us that I wasn't sure could ever be repaired. I found myself at the park a few blocks away, the same place I had gone earlier to clear my head. Only now, there was no clearing it. The betrayal was all I could think about. I sat down on one of the benches, staring at the darkened playground in front of me. For the first time since I discovered her affair, the weight of it all began to sink in. This wasn't just some fling. It wasn't some one-time mistake. It was months of lies, months of sneaking around, months of planning. The hotel, the texts, it wasn't just the physical betrayal that hurt the most, it was the emotional one. The fact that she had chosen to give herself to someone else, to make time for him while pushing me further away. How had I missed it? I thought we had problems, sure. Every couple does. But I never imagined this. Never thought she would stray so far. My phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me out of my thoughts. I didn't want to look, but I already knew who it was. Linda. She had probably realized by now that I wasn't coming back tonight. I pulled out the phone, her name lighting up the screen. I hesitated for a moment before swiping to answer. Jeff. Her voice was small, shaky. I didn't say anything at first. I could hear her sniffling on the other end, her breath hitching between sobs. Where are you? She asked, her voice trembling. Please come home. I'm so sorry. We can talk, we can fix this. I clenched my jaw, my hand gripping the phone tightly. Fix this? I finally said, my voice low. How exactly do you plan to fix months of lying to me, Linda? How do we fix this? She sobbed harder, her words barely audible. I don't know. I don't know, Jeff. But we can try. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything you want. Just please come back. I leaned back on the bench, staring up at the night sky, feeling the weight of her words, but still numb to them. Counseling doesn't erase what you've done, I muttered. It doesn't make it go away. I know, she whispered. I know it doesn't. But I love you, Jeff. I still love you. We've been together for so long, we can't just throw it all away. My chest tightened at her words, but they felt like they were coming from someone else, someone I didn't know anymore. You already threw it away, I said quietly. You threw it away the moment you went to him. Over and over again. She didn't respond right away, and I could hear her trying to catch her breath through her tears. Please come home. We'll figure this out. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll never see him again. I'll cut him off completely. I shook my head, though she couldn't see me. It's not that simple, Linda. You can't just expect me to forget. To act like this never happened. I don't expect you to, she said, her voice breaking. I can't lose you. Not like this. Please. Her desperation gnawed at me, pulling at the part of me that had loved her for so long. The part that remembered the good years, the happy moments. But now, those memories were tainted, overshadowed by what she'd done. How was I supposed to go back to being her husband when every time I looked at her, all I saw was betrayal? I don't know if I can do this, Linda, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. She was silent on the other end, her sobs quieting down. I could tell she was holding her breath, waiting for me to say something more. I need time, I added, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. I need time to figure out if I can even forgive this, if I can forgive you. I'll wait, she said softly. I'll wait as long as it takes. I didn't say anything else. I just hung up, staring at the phone in my hand. I wasn't sure if I believed her, wasn't sure if time could fix what had been broken between us. But for now, all I could do was breathe. All I could do was take it one moment at a time, trying to piece together what was left of my shattered world. I sat there on that park bench, phone still clutched in my hand, feeling like I had reached the edge of something. My life, my marriage, everything I thought I understood, it all seemed so far away now, like I was looking at it through a fog. Linda's words echoed in my head. I'll wait as long as it takes. But what did that even mean? Could time really fix this? Could I just forget the texts, the hotel, the nights she slipped out of our house to be with someone else? The answer felt obvious, but I didn't want to admit it to myself. I got up and started walking again, my feet moving on autopilot. The park was quiet, the occasional rustle of leaves in the breeze the only sound. The stillness reminded me of how alone I felt in that moment. I had people, friends, family, but how was I supposed to explain this to anyone? How was I supposed to admit that my wife of 20 years had been cheating on me with a neighbor? I pulled out my phone again, almost instinctively, and stared at the contact list. I scrolled through the names: Mark, my brother, a few friends from work. All people who would want to help, who'd tell me to walk away, to divorce her. But none of them would understand how deeply this cut. How it wasn't just about the betrayal but the years of history, the life we built. My thumb hovered over Mark's name, my lawyer, before I hesitated and closed the contact. I wasn't ready to pull that trigger. Not yet. I headed back toward the house, each step heavier than the last. I didn't know what I was walking into, if Linda would be sitting there, still crying, or if she'd pulled herself together. But either way, I knew the confrontation wasn't over. I had left, and now I was coming back, not because I wanted to, but because I didn't know what else to do. The house was dark when I walked in. For a second, I thought maybe she'd gone to bed, but then I saw her, curled up on the couch, her knees pulled to her chest, her face buried in her hands. She didn't look up when I entered, didn't say a word. I stood there, staring at her, unsure of what to do next. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand more answers, to make her explain every detail of what had happened. But another part of me was just exhausted. Tired of the anger, tired of the confusion, tired of feeling like my entire life had been flipped upside down. She finally lifted her head, her eyes swollen from crying, her face pale. "I didn't think you'd come back," she whispered. I didn't respond right away. I just sat down on the opposite end of the couch, as far from her as possible. The silence between us was thick, like we were both waiting for the other to break it, but neither of us wanted to go first. "I don't know what you want me to say," she finally murmured, her voice barely audible. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know if it can be fixed." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of her words. She was right. How do you fix something like this? Was it even possible? "I'm trying to understand," I said slowly, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm trying to figure out how you could do this, how you could lie to me for months. But I can't. I can't wrap my head around it." She wiped at her face, fresh tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I was selfish. I felt lost. I don't even have a good reason. I felt invisible, like you didn't see me anymore." I scoffed, shaking my head. "Invisible? How was I supposed to see you when you never said a word? You didn't even give me a chance, Linda. You just left." "I know," she whispered. "I should have talked to you. I should have done a lot of things differently. But it's too late for that now." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "You've said you're sorry, but sorry doesn't fix this. It doesn't fix what's broken." Her voice cracked as she spoke. "I know it doesn't. But I'm willing to try, Jeff. If you give me a chance, I'll do whatever it takes." The room felt suffocating, the weight of her words pressing down on me. I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Part of me wanted to walk away, to leave her and this mess behind. But another part of me, the part that remembered the 20 years we'd spent together, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was something worth saving. "I don't even know if I can forgive you," I said quietly. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you without seeing him, without seeing everything you did." She winced at my words, the pain on her face raw and real. "I understand. I do. But I'm begging you, Jeff. Don't give up on us. Not yet." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the fear in her eyes, the fear that this was the end. That everything we'd built was about to crumble into dust. "I don't know," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I just don't know." The silence settled between us again, heavy and suffocating. And for the first time in 20 years, I realized I had no idea what the future held for us. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating, like a wall I wasn't sure I wanted to break down. I kept my eyes fixed on the floor, unable to look at her. I couldn't bear to see the pain on her face anymore, or the guilt. It wasn't enough. It couldn't be enough. Linda shifted beside me, her voice small. "Jeff, please talk to me. Say something. Anything." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and let the words come, even though I wasn't sure what I was going to say. "I don't know what you expect me to say, Linda. You did this. You broke us. And I don't know if we can ever put it back together." "I know," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I know I broke us. I don't deserve your forgiveness, I get that. But I'm asking for it. I'm asking for a chance to try. I felt my chest tighten, a mix of anger and sadness twisting inside me. A chance? You want a chance? After everything? I stood up, pacing the living room. Do you even hear yourself? You didn't just hurt me, Linda. You destroyed everything we built together. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, but I couldn't stop. The words just kept coming, raw and unfiltered. You made me feel like an idiot. Every night you snuck out, every lie you told, every time you came home pretending everything was fine. And for what? For him? For a few months of sneaking around behind my back? My voice broke, the weight of it all finally hitting me. I trusted you, and you tore that trust apart like it meant nothing. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. I'm so sorry. I hate myself for what I've done. I wish I could take it all back. I swear to you, it's over with him. It's been over. I cut him out of my life. It shouldn't have started in the first place. I muttered, turning away from her. You made a choice. A choice that killed everything between us. The house was quiet except for the sound of her crying, and the walls seemed to close in around me. I didn't know if I could stand to be here any longer, not in this space where every memory was now tainted by what she'd done. I don't know how we move forward from this, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can. She stood up then, wiping her face as she crossed the room toward me. Jeff, I know it's a lot. I know I've destroyed your trust. But please, please don't walk away. We can try to rebuild. We've been together for so long. Doesn't that mean something? Her words hung in the air, and for the first time, I felt something inside me crack. She was right. 20 years. That wasn't something you could just erase. But the betrayal, it was a weight that felt impossible to carry. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said, my voice rough. I don't know if I can look at you and not see him. She flinched at my words, but she didn't back down. I'll give you time. As much time as you need. I'll do whatever it takes. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. Just please, don't leave. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw the desperation in her eyes. The love that, despite everything, still existed between us. But it was buried under layers of hurt, under months of lies. Could we dig it out? Could we find our way back from this? I'm not promising anything, I said, finally meeting her gaze. I don't know if I can forgive you, Linda. I don't know if I'll ever trust you again. But I need space. I need time to figure out what I want. She nodded, her face still streaked with tears. I understand. I'll give you whatever you need. I turned and walked toward the front door, the weight of my decision settling over me like a heavy fog. I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days, I said quietly. I need to think. She didn't argue. She just nodded, her eyes filled with pain, but no more words left her lips. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door, feeling the cool night air hit me like a slap. As I drove away, the silence of the empty streets felt strangely comforting. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But beneath that calm was a question I couldn't answer. Could I forgive her? Could I ever look at Linda the same way again? I didn't know. And for now, that was the only truth I had. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed it, hit like and leave a comment with your favorite part. We'd love to hear your perspective.